welcome to the Fantasy Football Heroes. As always, I'm your host, Ernesto Santana, and I'm joined by Aaron Bergeron.
Oh, hey, what's going on?
Oh, not much. What a crazy week of preseason action this last week was. Jumping straight into the news and notes, we've got your top 10 wide receivers, so I kind of want to breeze through this so we have some time to talk about these guys. First off the bat, AJ Green suffered an ankle sprain this weekend. Unfortunately, there was ligament damage. It resulted in him having a minor procedure this morning to clean that up. So he's expected to miss the first few games of the season. They didn't really put a defined timetable on it, but just safe to assume about 3 to 4 games, depending on how things go.
And in other news, Derrick Henry, he left practice since last week. He was spotted with a boot, but today it was reported that he's out of the boot and it's just a bruised calf. So I think there's not really any concerns there. Keep watching the situation, but it seems like everything is good to go there.
Yeah, it seems like he's going to be okay. And that is the joy of week 1 of preseason, where it seems like the end of the world one day, and the next day it's just a bruised calf, and there's nothing to worry about, unless
you know who it is the end of the world for? The Giants wide receivers.
The Giants wide receivers. What more can you say about the Giants wide receivers? Corey Coleman out for the season with an ACL tear. Sterling Shepard was the first go down with a fracture on his thumb. It was just the end of the thumb, so there is hope that he'll be ready for week 1. So he gets out almost scotch-free, and then Golden Tate will be serving a 4-game suspension for PEDs.
Which he's appealing.
Yes, which he is appealing. He has been
whatever.
appealing, but it does not seem like he's going to win out on that one.
No.
So, I mean, clear blue skies over for the G-men, especially for Evan Ingram, who we will definitely be talking about next week when we do tight ends.
It has to hurt Saquon though, in my opinion. And we don't have to go into it, but like
hurt. I think I don't know if you saw the post that went out on the Instagram, but when all the news broke out about the Giants wide receivers, I said Saquon's rushing attempt versus defensive fronts, 0% for 7-man fronts, 0% for 8-man fronts, 100% for 11-man fronts. They're just going to put every single person in the box to try to stop Saquon. But I mean, that was the expectation going into the season with Saquon, even before the injury. So, it is what it is. I think he'll be fine. I have seen more and more people.
Defenses against the Giants.
I know,
sound good.
Absolutely.
Early.
I mean,
early
I have seen people already on tilt. I have seen more and more people taking, say, Christian McCaffrey or Alvin Kamara at that one spot over Zeke or over Barkley. So the tilt's already happening, but we'll just have to wait and see how things shake out.
All right. And before we go into the receivers, I have one more piece of news. Le'Veon Bell tweeted this week to apologize for last season for anybody who drafted him. And I'm already super low on Le'Veon Bell. But that tweet did nothing for me. If anything, it knocked him further down because now he's just promising things he can't. He can't promise you championships.
Did you see Matthew Berry's response to it? It was he was like, well, you also promised us that 2018 was going to be your best season yet. You promised us that you weren't going to hold out, and you promised us one more thing. But I'm just not too confident in your Twitter promises these days.
He's out of my top 10. I'm sorry. Like, no way.
The tweet put him out of your top 10.
It really did. I feel like he's just such a question mark. I have no confidence. And look, he could be wide receiver 1. I wouldn't be surprised, but I'm not touching it with a 10-foot pole. Someone else's problem.
I mean, he's done well in preseason. He left at one point because of cramps. That was his first day of full training because they've had him
I
do
don't
about.
question his health or his ability. I question Gase giving him the ball and the Jets offense and
I think the
how many
Jets
times they're
offense
gonna.
will be good. I think the Jets offense will be good. I think the only thing that worries me there is I have heard a lot of uptick when it comes to Ty Montgomery and the way they're using him. And I think that's what someone said. That's how they're going to use them is just a two-headed monster and constantly running the football. So I, I don't know. That whole offense is just I don't know what they're going to come out with, but I'm still confident in Bell as a top 10.
You have
I
fun with
will
that.
have fun with that on championship lane. Anyways, I think we've gone over the notes far enough. Let's get into these wide receivers because I want some time to talk about each and every one of these guys.
You have a big gun. You are not the big gun.
Tony, don't be jealous.
No, it's subtle, all the bells and whistles.
Yeah, it's called being a badass.
Fine.
So, leading it off, the consensus number one wide receiver for us was DeAndre Hopkins. What more can you say about DeAndre Hopkins? The number 2 overall on half-point PPR last season, 115 receptions, 163 targets, and 1,572 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 0 drops. 0 drops for DeAndre Hopkins. In my opinion, he's as safe as it gets
He's a freak.
at that one spot.
He's a freak.
He's a freak.
Draft him if he falls to you where he's going ADP. You take him. There's no question marks here. He's gonna get you. He's gonna get you points. He's proven time and again that he doesn't even need a good QB to be a top wide receiver, and now he's got a QB who's going
Yep.
into his second year or third year, and I just yeah, this is your guy. He's good. Enough said.
Yep. He's enough said. He's as safe as it gets. He may not have the upside as some of these other guys that we're going to talk about, but I mean, he's a lock for a top 3 spot. And one of those other guys, my number 1 wide receiver, the consensus 2 over here, Davante Adams, the Green Bay Packers, 111 receptions on 169 targets, 1,386 yards, 13 touchdowns. He was your number 3 wide receiver over the course of last season. I mean, he's my number 1 overall. And it's the touchdowns are there. You've got Aaron Rodgers throwing you the ball. I know you were a little bit lower than I was. I don't. You had Hopkins as 1, correct?
Yes. Same situation as last time. These top 3 guys that we're going to talk about, they're in a tier of their own. I think they're interchangeable depending on your tastes or if you like risk or reward. I think I put him at the bottom because he doesn't have the track record of the other 2. Last season was great for him, but it's only one season. I sort of want to see it again before I have the same amount of confidence. He loses Randall Cobb, and I always get iffy when it's a new offensive coordinator. But I think he had touchdowns last year. Aaron Rodgers is throwing you the ball, which is always a good thing. And he's on a good team. They're going to win games. They're going to score points. Even if he has like a slight regression, he's still a top 3 wide receiver. Numbers were good. I like him. He's top tier.
I don't think he has a regression whatsoever, and that's my reasoning for putting him number 1. I think he's gotten better year over year over year over year. And then technically speaking, he was 2nd overall in touchdowns with the 13.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a down year for Aaron Rodgers. Last year, it was about a 4.2% touchdown pass conversion from his attempts. His career average is 6.2. So you're talking about 12 extra touchdowns to be spread out. You got to figure at least 3 to 4 of those go to Davante Adams. So you give me Davante Adams with an extra 4 touchdowns last season. I'll take that at the 1 spot all day, every day.
I think he's your most
He's
potential.
my one.
Yeah, he is, but I'm saying he's your most
Yeah.
potential upside of these three. He has
Yeah, 100%.
a lot of potential to be even better than last year, which would be number one wide receiver overall probably. But I
Mm,
have some question marks. It's a bit riskier than Julio or Hopkins to me.
yep. Um, Speaking of Julio, he is our consensus number 3, Mr. Julio Jones. 113 receptions on 170 targets last season, 1,677 yards and only 8 touchdowns. Um, Speaking of it only going up, I mean, it can only go up for Julio Jones with 8 touchdowns.
I mean, last year was a
The
weird year
first,
for him. Yeah, Uh, he'll get
it really was.
as long as Julio stays healthy. Like he has to go up in touchdowns, like you said, and he's Julio. Like he's gonna freaking
He
catch
does.
the
He
ball.
doesn't even. He doesn't even have to stay healthy.
He still does good.
That's Julio Jones. Quintessential Julio Jones is he limps onto the field, catches for 168 yards, and then limps off the field.
since
He's
since 2014, he's had over 1,400 receiving yards every season. And like, yeah, the touchdowns were down, but like he's gonna do that again, and he's gonna get more touchdowns. He just has to. It
I
was
think yeah,
unreal
I think
last season how long it took him to get a freaking touchdown.
yep. I mean, you had the breakout of Calvin Ridley, and so that was just exploited. Now you've got um, pieces coming in around him where he may not see as much triple coverage, may not see as much double coverage as he was. Calvin Ridley is now an established threat. You have Austin Hooper coming back. Um, so I don't see any reason why the touchdowns wouldn't go up for Julio Jones.
Andy plays the Bucks twice a year. I mean, what more can you ask for?
Plays the Bucks twice a year. Matt Ryan had a great year last season. Fully expect the Falcons to be a top 10 offense like they are
Um,
every year.
you killed my segue to speaking of playing the Bucks twice a year.
Speaking of playing the Bucks twice a year, well, Tyreek doesn't play the Bucks twice a year.
I believe our consensus has Michael Thomas as number 4.
Our consensus has Tyreek Hill as number 4.
Well, that's unfortunate that my segue did not work.
Our consensus has Tyreek as number 4.
I like
It has
Tyreek.
Thomas as number 5. I like Tyreek too. So Tyreek, he was number 1 in 2018. 87 receptions on 137 targets, 1,479 yards, 12 touchdowns, 27 catches were over 20 yards. So I mean, he made his hay on big plays. Um, I mean, out of everyone, he is the third lowest receptions out of the top 10 that we have here, and he ended up as the number 1 wide receiver. So I mean, that's what you come to expect from Tyreek Hill. He is the quintessential boomer bust. So you're either getting 40 points
Yeah,
or you're getting 10 points.
he's definitely a
He's
risky pick in terms of wide receiver. I think both of us have him high, so I think
yeah.
we're uh, we're banking on the risk paying off just because he's on the Chiefs. He gets rushing yards too, which is nice. If you're in a league that gets kick return yardage, that's even more
Mm-hmm.
pluses. Um,
I
he's
mean, I have him high because I expect him to do what he did last year, which
which
was
was
I expect him
number
to
one.
finish with a stupid amount of yardage and a stupid amount of touchdowns. To say that it's going to be evenly spread out, not so much.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you're going to have to make up for that with it all depends on how you draft, what kind of players you like. My number 1, I like someone more like a Hopkins or more like a Davante Adams who's going to average 20 something a game,
More
who's going
consistency.
to consistently show up. And then I can, kind of parlay that with some wide receivers that have some upside. I have stronger running backs, something like that. With Tyreek Hill, you need someone who's like a PPR monster
Mm-hmm.
to kind of accompany you that with. So like an Edelman this season or Larry Fitzgerald from a couple of seasons ago, someone who just pepper with targets, has a lot of target share, and they're just going to give you that good baseline, that decent floor to go with.
And speaking of playing the Bucks twice a year,
Speaking of playing the Bucks twice a year, Michael Thomas of the New Orleans Saints comes in at number 5. He was the number 6 last season with 125 receptions on 147 targets, 1,405 yards, and 9 touchdowns. He's a PPR machine. That's what he does. He plays the Bucks twice a year. He plays the Falcons twice a year. He plays the Panthers twice a year. He plays secondaries that he can just absolutely torch twice a year. So, and he's got a Hall of Famer, Drew Brees, throwing him the football. There's not much else that can be said about Michael Thomas.
yeah, I think I like Michael Thomas to have a better year than last year because without Mark Ingram, I like the chances that they air it out more. I think Kamara and Thomas are going to catch the ball a lot. I feel like they're not going to run it as much as they did in past seasons. The touchdowns, once again, like weird that he didn't get double digits, but I mean, he led the league in receptions. I mean,
yeah, that's the only thing
a
that
good
worries
thing.
me. And I think you really saw that happen towards the end of the last season because I was a Michael Thomas owner, and it was towards the end of the last season that you had everyone and their mother catching the football from Drew Brees for a touchdown. There was I forget, there was a night game that they played where they had 4 different wide receivers all catch
Cameron
touchdowns.
Meredith.
None of them named Michael Thomas. So that was the only thing that worried me was I don't know what Sean Payton and Drew Brees were doing, but I wasn't a fan of it.
Yeah,
So that was it.
he's I had him at 4. He's just outside that top tier for me. Like he's just consistent and
He really is. He belongs middle of the pack. He's super safe.
just want those touchdowns that he missed out on last season for sure.
Especially if you're in PPR. So you can't get much safer than Michael Thomas. So anyways, number 6 spot is Odell Beckham Jr. Now with the Cleveland Browns. 77 receptions, 124 targets, 1,052 yards, 6 touchdowns. He finished as the wide receiver 16 last season. But in my opinion, he belongs in this top 10. The talent is undeniable. I have him at 5. I think he's going from an offense that couldn't keep it together last season, an end of his era, Eli Manning throwing to him, and with the breakout of Saquon Barkley. So I think last season there was just a lot going against Odell having an elite year when it comes to fantasy. I think that changes exponentially this year. I think you have Baker Mayfield, who's not afraid at all to air the ball out. I think you have a Browns offense that's going to live in the red zone. I think you partner him with Jarvis Landry, his longtime friend from LSU, and I think they just torch secondaries all season long. I have high hopes for OBJ, and I think we're going to see him go back to the breakout version of OBJ. I just left Wayne speechless. Just left him absolutely speechless. He couldn't say anything better right there.
I like a lot of what you said. I do feel like he's in a much better situation. I have some concerns about his health. I don't know if it's Eli or him, but I felt like I remember him dropping a lot of balls. I owned him in a league last year and remember watching games and questioning why he did not hold on to the ball. Yeah, I feel like the Browns have this like hype train every year, and it just keeps every offseason there's more and more. Like they do more and more
did
things.
not feel this way about the Browns last year as I do this year.
Sure. I mean, this year it's like they made so many moves in the offseason, but it's one of those things that I have to believe to see because they're still the Browns.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I I'm not as high on him, but I do think he's going to have a great year. I think he'll have a much better year than he did last year, and putting him in the top 10 is absolutely where he belongs. He has the talent, and assuming he can stay healthy, I feel like Jarvis Landry really helps. They help each other. They're both going to catch the ball a lot because they can mess with secondaries. You can't double cover one of
See
them.
that,
You have to cover them
and
both equally.
that's the thing. He's had to do what Julio's had to do the last few years,
Mm-hmm.
but with an end of the road Eli Manning thrown to him as opposed to a Matt Ryan. So he's had to deal with being opposite of Victor Cruz and Sterling Shepard, and I think Brandon Marshall for some time. So I mean, it's just these back to back guys. Now you have a guy like Jarvis Landry who's also a big threat. I think that's the biggest help that I see. I mean, Eli Manning,
Yep.
maybe the back of at the end of his career, but he's still a Super Bowl quarterback. So I mean, you just get a slight bump with Baker Mayfield, in my opinion. But having a bona fide second wide receiver to be opposite the field with you is the biggest help that OBJ gets.
Agreed.
So moving along, keeping it moving. Our consensus number 7, Juju Smith-Schuster of the Pittsburgh Steelers, wide receiver 9 last season, 111 receptions, 166 targets, 1,426 yards, and 7 touchdowns last season. The biggest question to me with Juju is, can he step into the wide receiver 1 role? Can he take on that extra coverage? What holdups do you have about Juju stepping into this echelon with him having control of that receiving core?
I honestly don't. I feel like I don't have many concerns. I think I could even potentially bump him over some of these other guys. I think he's going to have a huge year. I don't think that losing AB really helps or hurts him. I feel like he has the talent. He stepped into the role that he was meant to do last year. He's a fun guy off the field. I honestly could see him in the top 3. I think the Steelers air out the ball, they score points, and he is going to be the benefactor of AB not being there. I like him this year. I'm high on Juju.
Yep.
Give me him on my team if I can get him in that
100%. I mean, he had 4 receptions inside of the 2-yard line last year. So I mean, you take away did still, and you add 4 touchdowns to his 7. He's got double-digit touchdowns. He easily cracks the top 4 last season. So it's to say that none of those 15 touchdowns that Antonio Brown caught last season are going to go Juju's way. It almost makes no sense.
The question you asked me was, are there any concerns? If anything, it's Ben Roethlisberger. I feel like he's getting up there, and he still finds a way, but just anytime now we're going to be concerned. But I think he's the talent. Even if there's somebody that has to come in halfway through the season because of injury or whatever, I still feel like Juju's got the numbers. He's going to get the touchdowns, and the Steelers are going to feed him the ball.
For sure. I don't think there's much more to say about Juju. It's simply a question of how high are you on Juju. However, his paramour from last season, one of the bigger question marks this season, is Antonio Brown. Your consensus for last season: 104 receptions, 169 targets, 1,297 yards, and 15 touchdowns. That's, in my opinion, Antonio Brown is almost only on this list because it's Antonio Brown. Situation wise, I don't. It's not favorable for him whatsoever, in my opinion. I'm just gonna kind of jump on this because I'm super low on Antonio Brown, and touchdown regressions are almost for sure a thing in his future this season. He had 15 touchdowns last season. Derek Carr threw 19 touchdowns all of last season. So you're talking about 15 of Derek Carr's total 19 touchdowns going to Antonio Brown next season. And I mean, I just don't know what to expect of the Raiders this season. Offensively, I think they're going to be an offense that tries to piece it together all season. And if you look at it, 17 of the top 24 wide receivers are on the top 15 of scoring offenses in 2018. So it's a question of whether or not you put the Raiders into those top 15 offenses next season. I just don't see that happening whatsoever. I think he'll be fringe top 10. But at this point, I'm just putting him in the top 10 out of respect.
He he is a freak of nature. I think he has the talent. He has the speed. Antonio Brown, to me, I agree with what you're saying. We both had him at 8. The Raiders, Derek Carr to me is middle of the pack. I think he's had his moments, but I'll tell you what I don't like. It's the Raiders' offensive line. I don't know where they ranked last year, but I'm going to go with bottom 5. Just watching them play football last year, it was like orange cones are the offensive line. Antonio Brown needs to be burning secondaries, and he just won't have time to get out there because Derek Carr will be on the ground. The upside, I think, that lets him stay in the top 10 is he will get garbage time touchdowns. I guarantee it. His fourth quarter stats compared to his first quarter stats will be ridiculous. I'm predicting that.
Yeah,
he's going to burn some fantasy teams because they think they're going to be doing so good, and then Raiders get like 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter to make it like 35-14.
Yeah, this is definitely a Raiders offense that's going to have to make up some points towards the back half of games. Their offensive line ranked 28 out of the 32 teams last season. So bottom 5. Nice. So, I mean, that's just it. That's what I'm saying. Player-wise, all over Great. Antonio Brown. Situationally, though, just absolutely terrible. So, I just don't see it happening. That's what I mean. He's in the top 10 because he's so consistent at the position. So we'll just have to wait and see how that shakes out. However, speaking of playing the Bucs 2 times in the season, this next person does not play the Bucs at all, and that's because he's on the Buccaneers. Mike Evans, the wide receiver, 8 last season, 86 receptions on 139 targets, 1,524 yards, 8 touchdowns. I think it's a great year for Mike Evans. I think what we've come to get from Mike Evans is, 1,300, 1,500 yards. I think the touchdowns go up for Mike Evans. You had Adam Humphries going to Tennessee this season. So there is the emergence of Chris Godwin and O.J. Howard.
Yeah, I think Jameis being the QB, assuming we stay consistent this year, I think that'll be better for him because Evans performed significantly better when Jameis Winston was the QB. If we stay consistent in that, we've mentioned it with the Julio and Michael Thomas, but the Bucs have a bad pass defense, which means they will be behind in games. They will be throwing the ball a lot. Sort of like how Antonio is going to get garbage time points or points because they're behind and they have to be throwing the ball. James is going to be throwing the ball a lot.
Yeah,
and I don't like any running back in Tampa because they will be throwing the ball.
They don't have a very great running game. So all they can do is throw the ball. So
and Mike Evans is going to get the volume of those receptions and looks. So yeah, I'm high on Mike Evans. I don't know if he'll be top 5. It's possible, but I think he's a consistent player and he'll get points every game. I don't know if he'll have huge games.
I don't have the confidence in Jameis to have him in top 5. Can it happen? Yeah. Absolutely. I think the closest he'll get is is 7. 7. He might be able to flex into 6. But I was talking to someone else. I mean, it's a tough list to crack into when you talk about these top 10 wide receivers. So yeah. I think it comes down to the offense as a whole. It comes down to the quarterback. I mean, with these top 5 guys, you've got Deshaun Watson, Aaron Rodgers, Matt Ryan, Patrick Mahomes, Drew Brees. So I mean, you got the elite of the elite quarterbacks throwing in the football, and that's a lot of the reason why they're in that position.
You mean Jameis is an elite? What? No. Say it isn't so.
Jameis is elite at many things,
he
but
won the Heisman
quarterbacking is not one of them. He was elite in
and the
2013.
championship.
Don't get me wrong. He was elite that year.
We have the added benefit of living in Tampa Bay area, so people talk about the Bucs, and it's funny because they're not good. Anyway.
They're not. And we're going to close this out with a person that I'm extremely bullish on. Wayne's a little bit higher, so we're going to have him defend him here quickly. But Keenan Allen of the Los Angeles Chargers, 97 receptions on 137 targets, 1,196 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Take it away, Wayne.
All right. Since his injury, which I know burned a lot of people, he has bounced back.
Me.
He has a ton of receptions, and I feel like once again he has Mike Williams breaking out. I feel like that helps him. People are going to have to look his way. I don't like that he doesn't get touchdowns, but boy, does he get receptions, and I'm fine with that. I think he has a ton of targets, ton of yardage, ton of receptions, 97 last year on 137 targets. He has the ability to break off big plays, and I think as long as he stays healthy and you're in a PPR league, Keenan Allen is a safe top 10 pick. I like him. I get the hate, but I feel like Chargers are a good team, and they have a good running back. They have a good situation. Phillip Rivers slings the ball more than anybody. I feel like sometimes he has games where you look at his stat line, you're like, he threw how many times? Keenan Allen's going to get the ball as long as he stays healthy, and I feel like the touchdowns go up this year.
See, with me, I don't think they go up this year. Just because you have that running core with Melvin Gordon, be it he ends the holdout, Justin Jackson, Austin Eckler. You have Hunter Henry coming back, and then Mike Williams. I think he eats into Keenan Allen's target share just a little bit this season. But I mean, as a whole, I think the Chargers are almost transitioning to where their offense, who is always impressive, is almost being overshadowed by their defense, by guys like Joey Bosa, Derwin James, and I think
the Chargers are good. Yes.
I think you're going to see. I think you're going to see a slower offense. You're going to see an offense that doesn't have to sling the ball as much. And so I think that just hurts Keenan Allen for me. I think that's what happens. I much rather have a guy like T.Y. Hilton, who was in my top 10, didn't make the consensus ranks, but I much rather have a guy who's on an offense that I expect to be a top 5 offense, catching balls from a quarterback that I expect to be a top 3 quarterback. And T.Y. Hilton back half of last season, after the injuries they suffered in the first half of the season, from weeks 11 to 17, he was a wide receiver 2. He was a wide receiver 6 when it comes to targets. And I think that's just a lot more tantalizing to me. I don't have Keenan Allen inside of my top 10. I see him ending up more around the 13 to 14 range.
Honestly, I do feel like they're very close in ranks. I had T.Y. Hilton right after Keenan Allen. I had T.Y. Hilton last year. I feel like both of these guys are guys that if they don't get touchdowns each week, you're disappointed. They were not heavy. Neither of them were heavy on the touchdowns. I think T.Y. Hilton had 7 last year, and I feel like a lot of them were like long breakout touchdowns. I don't feel like he got the red zone looks. I think Eric Ebron stole those away.
Those all Aaron Ebron, Marlon Mack.
Yeah. So I feel like I'm worried about T.Y. Hilton in the touchdowns, just like I'm worried about Keenan Allen in the touchdowns. But I feel like Keenan Allen he gets more receptions. So if you're looking for that guy that's getting you PPR points, who's catching the ball a lot, and maybe not getting in the end zone, I like Keenan Allen better just for that reason. that's my take. But like I said, I'm close enough on them that you can argue either way, and I'm okay with that. But I think both of these guys concern me with
Noted,
touchdowns.
100%. So that's our consensus top 10. We'll close the show today with a quick question regarding this. So, is there a wide receiver, maybe outside this top 10, maybe outside even the top 24, that you are targeting in every single draft because you believe they have the ability to break into that top 12 range?
So
top 12, top 15.
I was gonna say Kenny Galladay is the guy that I'm targeting that I feel like is going. I feel like I like him way above his ADP.
His ADP.
I don't feel like he's a top 15 kind of guy.
Where do you see him? Top 24?
I can see him being in the top 20. I feel like he's probably not there in ADP. I want to say he's probably significantly lower than that, but I feel like Kenny Galladay is a good talent, and Matt Stafford throws the ball a crap ton, and Detroit is hopefully trending up. There's second year under Patricia. I like what they have, and he doesn't have Golden Tate in front of him now. I think give me the Detroit wide receiver 1 under Stafford, and that's a consistent guy that you're counting on to get you lots of yards and lots of points. It's always happened, and I feel like Kenny Galladay can fit that role once again, and I feel like he does better than what people expect from him.
He's going in the 4th round. You've got guys like Robert Woods, Calvin Ridley, Tyler Lockett, Mike Williams, Chris Godwin, Cooper Kupp going around Kenny Galladay.
Oh yeah, I like him way better than any of those guys. Robert Woods, of the people that you listed, is fine. I think I'm okay with drafting him, but I have question marks there. I think Kenny Galladay is much more consistent. I feel like he could have games where he disappoints, but I think overall he's going to be getting a lot of looks, and I think he has the talent to get some touchdowns and roll in some passes.
See, I am actually leaning towards one of the guys that I mentioned, and that's Chris Godwin of the Buccaneers. Yes, I just kind of said there's some woes to go around with Mike Evans, having Jameis Winston throw him the football. But as I mentioned with Mike Evans, you have Adam Humphries leaving, who was a huge target of Jameis Winston. You have Deshaun Jackson leaving, who was a huge target of Ryan Fitzpatrick last season. So, I mean, those are 2 wide receivers that are just gone, and Chris Godwin is stepping into what I believe his breakout season. You saw flashes of it last season.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to hit a point in the season where we just see him go off the rails, and I think it's going to
top 15.
I'd put him in the top 15. I think him and Evans have potential to be that Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, Robert Woods, Brandon Cooks kind of stack where there's enough passing volume there to sustain 2 top 15 wide receivers, especially in that division. I think Chris Godwin is someone who you can get him in the back half of the 5th round. You've got guys like Kenny Galladay, you got guys like Alshon Jeffrey, Tyler Boyd, Darius Guice, Cooper Kupp, Lamar Miller, Rashad Penny, DJ Moore. I think those are all guys who I would gladly take Chris Godwin over. I think he's going to be safe reception wise, and I think he 100% has that upside to break into that top 15. So,
all right. Hot take.
You heard it here first. Next week we will be doing tight ends. So be sure to stay hyped for that. As always, you can find us on Instagram at the Fantasy Football Heroes.
Are there 10 good tight ends?
There are 10 good tight ends. 100%.
Oof.
I think there are 10 good tight ends. It gets a little messy towards the back half of those tight ends. But that's what these rankings are for. So to help people differentiate between the fruit and the cake and the fruit cake, the deliciousness and the nasty crap.
I thought these rankings were for when things didn't go right for somebody, they could come back to us and be like, well, you said he would be here. I thought that's
a classic blame Ernesto failsafe. Many people have those. But sure, if that is what these get used for, I'm more than happy to be that scapegoat.
I'm going to draft Godwin, and I'm going to blame you when he's not top 15. That's how this works.
Draft Godwin and then split your pot with me when he's top 15. All right.
We will see. It'll be fun to look back.
All right, that's it.
Many moons
Next week,
from now.
top 10 tight ends. That's the show. Check us out on Instagram. Check us out on YouTube. We'll catch you later.